Good morning, everybody out there. This is Morgan Denny over in Portland, Oregon. This is the PT on Ice Daily Show, and today we're going to talk about the topic, honesty is the best policy, mostly. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that the ICE sampler is coming up very quickly here. It will be on April 6th and 7th in Vegas as per the usual. This is going to be a great weekend that will kind of highlight some of the areas that each of the faculty are really jazzed about. So it's going to be a really, really fun weekend. Additionally, I'll be doing a climbing bouldering session, probably in Craft Boulders the Friday before. So if you are in the area and going to be there, hit me up. I'm happy to take anyone. So today I wanted to talk about honesty. The reason that I thought this was an interesting topic is because when I was first a baby PT, fresh out of school, raring to go, I really felt like I had a difficult time being super upfront with my patients, right? I loved to sugarcoat things, to be their cheerleader, to really give them that hope. Like that was something that I did. And probably a year or two into practicing, I remember, like checking out a friend that had gotten hurt, the things that you do on weekends, obviously. And being able to tell her, yep, your shoulder's fine or whatever it was, common sprain strain, give your 6 to 8 weeks, a couple exercises, no surgery, you're going to be fine. And she looked at me and said, hey, this is why I love being able to ask you these questions, is because you have this area of expertise, this thing that you can just do and kind of tell me what's real and give me your opinion on it. And it was that moment that really kind of like was defining for me, right? It hadn't quite occurred to me that at that point, like patients weren't just coming to me to be treated, they were coming to me for my opinion, for me to tell them kind of what was happening in their body. So, while that was fairly straightforward in that case, like that got me thinking about kind of how I treat patients and how honest I could be with them, right? And just that I felt like I needed to be more straightforward with them, not necessarily cynical, or negative about their condition, but just a lot more straightforward. And I think that is what we should do in general, but like the struggle is pretty real because that is not always a straightforward thing to be able to say, right? So, and because now I understand, like when I was a baby PT and I was a hope dealer, right? Like that was creating positive outcomes, right? There's a lot of reasoning behind this. Like as Justin likes to say, outcomes are the foundation that expectations are. No, wait, I'm doing that wrong. Expectations are the foundation that outcomes are built on. Guys, don't tell them I messed that one up at first. But that's true, right? I mean, when you give people bad news or seemingly bad news, especially if you feel like it, you take away their hope, right? You make them feel like, oh, this is going to fail. This is going to be a hard road. They're not going to succeed. And for some, like that's clearly not the right answer, is telling them. It's not. But finding your way towards the middle, I think, is really important, right? Like there are going to be patients that we fail with. Sorry to break it to you, right? But reality check. Like some of these patients are going to be your friends, your coworkers. Some are going to be people you thought would get better. Some are going to be people that you weren't sure at first, where you thought right off the bat in your heart of hearts, like this is never going to work out. So how do we save that last group the struggle, right? Like how do we change their trajectory from coming to PT for those 15 visits before we finally say, hey, maybe it's a good idea that you get surgery, right? Because no PT loves to say to a patient, like surgery is the option, because we all know that surgery is dangerous and that there are some poor outcomes with surgery, right? But being able to utilize that aspect of our knowledge and say, hey, this is your better option, like that's something that we need to be able to do, right? The other side, of course, is that I don't believe that we ever 100% know. A patient can walk into our office and, we may think this is going to be a struggle and they might do great in PT, or the flip side for that matter. So you can't always be 100% sure. And I think we need to sort of temper our honesty with that understanding that we don't know everything. I mean, I do, but nobody else, obviously. Yeah. Anyway, so just being sure that we are not only like confident in what we know, but that we portray the correct amount of information is really, really key. So, it's like, then this includes a lot of different patient types, right? Like chronic pain. This includes your pre-surgical patients who maybe are coming in and trying to avoid surgery. This also includes the neuro patient that randomly shows up at your ortho office. And even though, sure, you did that one neuro clinical rotation back when you were in school, your job is really to be honest and tell them that yes, as a patient, they have a lot of hope, and they're going to do great, but it's not going to be with you. It's going to be with someone who is a neuro PT, someone who has that expertise and can really give that patient what they need, And then the chronic pain patients on the other side, the ones who have been through the ringer, like once you have correctly identified them, those are the people that are going to need a little bit more positivity, right? Like those are the people that are going to point blank say to you, do you think my case is hopeless? And even though everything on your inside might be screaming, I don't know what else to do with you, it's your job to look them in the eye and poker face like crazy and say, yes, you're going to be just fine. I've done this with lots of patients and we've had a lot of positive outcomes. So you're going to need to fudge that one a little bit, because now we know that there's so much more psychology behind chronic pain that says that those patients' expectations are really going to drive not only their outcomes, but their pain levels, their feeling about therapy, how likely they are to be engaged. So that's an example of when you might not want to be completely honest or in the way that we're talking about, right? That you might need to fudge things a little bit. And that's okay. That's actually doing the educated thing. That's using your expertise as a PT in order to be honest in the way that these patients need, right? And then you get examples where it's like a little bit of both. Yesterday, I had a new patient who was coming to me for pre-surgical, basically exercises, because she's going to get bilateral TKAs in 9 to 12 months. Now, that seems very basic, right? Saw that on my schedule. I was like, bam, this is a no-brainer. This is a give-me patient. All right. But underlying factors, she has had pain for 10 plus years. She's tried everything under the sun. She's not sure she wants to have knee replacements. And on top of that, she has a systemic inflammatory condition that she calls pseudo-gout, but has a much more scientific name. So that kind of added a piece to it, right? Because now we know that we're not only dealing with this element of OA and strengthening pre-surgery to have a better outcome. Now we're dealing with like those chronic pain factors, knowing that the nervous system is more ramped up. But on top of that, we're dealing with the systemic inflammatory condition that is actually cyclical, right? So it comes and goes, it's going to change things. So while normally a patient in this position that I'm treating without all these underlying factors, I'm probably going to evaluate, assess, treat, exercise, build expectations about surgery and pain and all those things. This is a patient that was a little bit different. I also forgot to mention that she's a medical professional, right? Like insert grown here. So she felt like she was already well educated. So for this individual, like, yes, it could be a gimme patient, but no, it really wasn't. This is a patient that I needed to educate about her options, right? To tell that, hey, I know physical therapy has quote unquote failed you many times before, and that the exercises have always been painful, but this is really why. Like, to be able to tell her, yes, there are ways to build strength that are not going to drive your symptoms up, but that she has to understand that her underlying systemic inflammatory condition is something that she needs to learn how to monitor, because the same exercises that work for 5 days in a row are gonna have their day that they make her symptoms worse. And that could be her systemic inflammatory condition, that could be her chronic pain, that could be stress or lack of sleep, who knows? But she has to understand that some of those pieces are under her control, and the ones that are not, she can modify what she's doing in accordance, right? She's someone who needs to know that, like, if she's going to get a knee replacement in 9 to 12 months, but she needs to be functional, she might just go sit on the spin bike and hop in the pool every day for the next 6 months and save herself the pain of doing physical therapy until we're closer to surgery. It's like she needs to know that she has options. And as a medical professional, even coming in feeling like, she'd interviewed a bunch of PTs and been to a bunch of orthopedists, like even she didn't know that those were her options. So being honest with that patient, I was probably more brutally honest than I normally would be, but I feel was really important because giving her those ideas, right? Not just the hopeful ones, but just being very brutally honest and straightforward about what her challenges were going to be for a patient that's failed PT before is going to be really imperative so that she really understands that, yeah, it's going to be a rough go, but it's possible. And there are some aspects that she has under her control. And that piece, I think, is really important too, right? So these are hard patients, right? But I think also remembering when they're really, really, really hard is usually when you're a new grad, right? When you're a baby PT. And of course it's hard. Like, how do you recognize these different things? Like, you haven't seen the patterns. You don't know what things look like. You're not sure which direction or which symptoms are going to steer you in one direction or the other, right? Like, you wouldn't know a massive labral tear if it slapped you in the face. But if you pay attention, you'll start to find those patterns, right? And I think that's the key. I think that we all need to pay more attention, right? As our patients are coming in, we need to know when X, Y, and Z always lead to said outcome, because that's the only way we're going to be able to be as honest, not as we can be, but as honest as we should be with patients, right? And a lot of that comes with time, and a lot of it comes with practice, and a lot of it comes with just paying attention. So I feel like we need to be able to identify these things, be as honest as we can, and get patients where they need to be, including being in our office, right? So again, being honest with patients about, their possible outcomes, but also getting patients in the place they should be, letting them know when they're not going to make gains in PT and give them different options, right? Like, we need to be straightforward as much as possible, but just really remembering that when we have those patients that have chronic pain or where it's not necessarily appropriate to be 100% honest, that we're not dishonest, but, maybe we fib a little bit. It's not a big deal because it's with their outcome in mind, and it is using our expertise to not be 100% honest, right? So remember, the findings that, seem negative don't really have to be. We don't have to sugarcoat things, and we definitely should watch out for our poker faces. Make sure we don't make that like sullen, frowny face that I've seen a lot of people make when delivering news that they consider bad, right? We need to poker face. We need to hold it together. We need to present some of these outcomes or potential outcomes in the most positive way that we can without making it seem bad or good, because people are coming to us not just for treatment, but for advice, for consultation. They need our honest opinion. And sometimes, even though that's the harder thing to do, that's what we need to be giving them. So, outcome of this conversation, honesty is the best policy, mostly. And the song of the day, because it is the only song I could think of with the word truth in the title, is called The Truth by India Arie. So I'll post that below. Have a great Tuesday, everybody, and keep rocking.